Hey Leeward CC and community members, it is I, ʻUlu, the breadfruit of Leeward Community College. I want to give you a warm welcome to the Gain Knowledge, Build Relationships series hosted by Leeward's very own student government. The purpose of this series is to create a space where Leeward CC and UH system students, as well as community members, can listen to the different talk stories that highlight a wide variety of topics, including campus system updates from administrators, to personal stories from different individuals, as a way to build a safe community and gain information that may be helpful to all different walks of life. We hope you enjoyed this series. In this episode, student government hosted a talk story with Chancellor Carlos Pen on December 2nd, 2021, as a way to find out the updates that are happening on campus and possibly system-wide. Please note that the updates on this episode were shared a while back, and so there's always a subject to change in the upcoming days, weeks, and months. Now, let me pass it on to the main host. On to you, SG.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. We're here with Leeward Student Government as well as our Chancellor Carlos.
Hello, hi everyone. I'm glad to be here again and having some periodic updates, as well as being able to take some questions and feedback, whatever works. It's nice to see, that we've rolled out this fall semester, and even though there was information that was fluctuating right through the very first week of the semester, I think that we've reached a point where there's a better sense of comfort on coming onto campus. Just some very brief updates that you are all probably very aware about. Our LumiSite app has been updated so that you can check in daily and have uploaded either your vaccination card or your negative COVID test results, which are due on a weekly basis whenever you're planning to be on campus. Now, that was a little bit of a hiccup in its implementation toward the beginning of the semester because the app was delayed in its updates. And then the management of that information was also a little bit quirky. But we've been able to iron out quite a few wrinkles, and we're managing that to the best of our abilities. You've probably seen through our communications that we have reported a couple of other COVID cases here at Leeward. The good news is that so far we haven't seen any spread at Leeward. It's just individuals that happen to test positive that we are reporting. With that, I do want to ask, like the app does ask you, like LumiSite asks you, if you have any symptoms or have been exposed, I'd rather be careful and cautious, and please stay home, clear through your healthcare provider, or if you need to test before you come to campus, because there are ramifications. I understand that every now and then we'll learn that we may be testing positive after we've been in certain places. But if there's any chance that that might be the case, we want to be proactive in avoiding contact with others, because that's what we're experiencing here in Hawaii, are these the surge of cases. And so I think that it is because many are asymptomatic and breakthrough cases. So we want to be as proactive as possible. Again, the downside to having cases on campus is that we may have offices that need to shut down, and we may have classes that are going to be disrupted. And so we want to avoid that wherever possible, recognizing that, it is something that's likely to continue happening. And so we've been managing quite well in that capacity. I will not say that we are not overwhelmed. I think that many of our offices have been overwhelmed by everything that's been going on, so that you're aware whenever a student or an employee indicates that there is something, right? Maybe a sore throat or runny nose, and they report it to us. We're following up with all of these reported instances. And I would say that a very, 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 very small minority are actually cases that need to be reported because they're positive or have actually been on campus. But we're getting a lot of instances where a student tells their instructor that they tested positive. The instructor asks the students to report through our form. We follow up with them to find out that the student was never on campus. And that's like the best case scenario. And so I just wanted to reinforce that because of the disruptions that may occur, and also because some classes really would benefit from remaining face-to-face. And so we don't want to create any more instability there. And so that takes me into plans for the future. And so I want everyone to be very well aware that the university is still moving forward with a vaccination policy that comes into effect in January because of the FDA approval of the vaccine. I'm not in a position to share the hard details right now, but I will in a future meeting because there are interpretations that I don't want to misguide you. But the testing policy is available already for both for actually students, employees, and visitors to access the university as of right now. But come January, because a vaccine has been approved by the FDA, then it will move forward into that harder requirement for the vaccination. And you have all probably heard from our mayor, requirements to access some spaces, public spaces, that now will require a similar mechanism of showing either clearance through vaccination or a COVID negative result, a fresh COVID negative result. The university has contracted with clinical labs so that students and employees are able to go with their student ID, with their email. They could schedule the appointment, or with their student ID number, they could schedule an appointment through clinicals to get tested. And that's for the students that need to test weekly. There are some areas that the university serves where the testing sites aren't as readily available, even through clinical. And so what we are trying to do at this point is to identify some of these areas and maybe create some pop-up tents for testing. This is something that we are trying to do for our Waianae Moku. And so there are a lot of wrinkles to iron and a lot of negotiations to go through, but it's something that I think that would serve our communities well, as I don't want necessarily students to have to travel a great deal to get their weekly tests. And so those are things that are happening. In addition to that, as you can imagine, the fall is the beginning of winter, when the Northern Hemisphere typically has their flu season. And so we're not necessarily sure what to expect about COVID, its infectivity, new strains, the caseloads, and urgency for all of this. And so we're still navigating that. As you can imagine, as a university, we publish our class schedules ahead of time so that students and the college can plan for those courses. As a result, we're going to need to be making some decisions on, the modality of these classes. And so it is likely going to continue looking very similar to where we are, even though we're going to try to infuse a little bit more face-to-face. But again, all of this can really change dramatically as the pandemic continues to evolve. And so I don't have a hard number for you on the number of sections, for example, or what percentage of sections will be face-to-face. But we are trying to motivate a few more to go back face-to-face to serve those students that really learn better that way. But we also listen to a lot of the feedback. And quite frankly, one of the most important feedbacks that we get comes through the registration process. We've seen that in many disciplines, we'll offer the same number of sections face-to-face and online, and the online ones sell a lot quicker than the face-to-face ones. And so we need to be responsive to that and continue to supply the sections that are necessary for students to complete their programming. And so at the risk of going on for a very long time, I think that I'll take pause now and see if you have any questions that you may want me to address or any topics, or maybe questions that I may need to come back with answers in the future.
Thank you. Anyone have questions, feedback about how the semester is going?
I think I did have a question from last week's meeting that I think Leilani brought up the topic on how like the protocol for the negative COVID testing was just recently made, and I guess students maybe possibly missed that. Have you dealt with any of those concerns, or do you have any recommendations on how to go about that instance, I guess, where they missed the class because they weren't cleared?
Sure. By and large, our instructors have been very nimble. If students reached out to them for any specific circumstances, I know for a fact that the very first week was a little bit choppy. So we tried to be a little bit nimble and try to point at resources where students could get that test taken care of. I actually worked at with the welcome committee and welcoming students, and there were some students that were yet to put their LumiSite app on their phones. And so there was that lag. And we did hear from some of the newer students that were telling us that they had intended on opening all of our emails on the first day of school. And so they would not have necessarily picked up on all of the communications that came in. And so the best resource that I can be for you is if a student finds themselves in a position where they may have missed classes and they don't know the better recourse, is to connect directly with that instructor. And if the response is not necessarily conducive to that student moving forward, there are appeal processes. The one thing that will be hit is our participation verification process, which is intended to support students' progress. And so with that in mind, if a student happens to be dropped because they weren't here the first week, but they had intended to really push forward, there are processes to support students that way. But I would hope that the instructor and the students were able to address those needs and that we don't have many. So to answer that question, I would say that I know that some students came ill-prepared because they weren't really opening their messages because they needed a little bit of help on how to get the app. And they may have even been able to upload their app, but they didn't have their vaccine card on them or the test result. And in those instances, we were asking them to go home and fix it. But there were very, 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 very few cases. I think of two that I know of.
Thank you.
Alex, did you have? Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chancellor. Thank you for being here. So you spoke of the influx of students registering for online programs, more so than in-person classes. And, a lot of what we've been talking about is the focus going into in-person classes. Is it overwhelming for the online programs, or is just as much focus being put into the online programs and innovative ideas, things like that?
That's a great question, Alex. Quite frankly, Leeward had been leading for the university in terms of online delivery. And so we have a lot of resources available to that. What the pandemic did is that it pushed even faculty that may have resisted the online environment to go online. We are trying to work on more of the quality versus quantity model. So we want to get faculty to go through more professional development and more improvements within their own courses. Online is not going to go away. You're probably aware of this, but pre-pandemic, Leeward, 30% of our classes were online already. And so we're shifted where we're just about 70% online today. It will likely end up in a half and half. We have a lot of programs that are very hands-on, and we know that those will remain hands-on, but we know that in perpetuity, online is going to have a much stronger presence for us. And so we are investing resources there. As you can imagine, a lot of the stimulus monies that have come from the federal government have been used to get our technology up and going in that capacity. And so it is here to stay, and we're definitely investing resources there. I actually just came out of a meeting with some of my leadership where we know that as a focus, we want to strategize for online being here to stay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have one. So I've had a couple of my students, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, about the reports, right? How we have to report when there is a COVID case on campus. So if you can just share with everybody, like what that report is, what should we be aware of? Because some of my students were concerned for their safety when they got that email. So just share a little more about that email and what we should look out for. Thank you.
Sure thing. And so you will probably get guidance from just about everyone on the campus that we have that reporting form where if you fear that you may have been in contact or you happen to be COVID positive, you would send that information up. That information is coming to a very select few. That's why some of us feel overburdened and have these, dark spots under our eyes because we've been spending a lot of hours figuring this out. That information is kept in the highest confidence. And what will happen to you process-wise is that in that form, you will give us some contact information in context and as to why you think that maybe you need to submit that. It may be that an instructor told you to submit it because you may have been a close contact to a student, or a faculty or someone that may have been positive. In that case, you provide some limited information that goes to the very limited few that will then connect with you to ask you some additional questions. And these additional questions are going to determine whether you really were a close contact because there's a lot of presumed close contacts. And so to give you an idea on process, if I happen to be COVID positive and we went to a picnic table and had lunch together, you would be a close contact. And the parameters there are that you are within that social distancing space and that you're sitting together for at least 15 minutes. If we're not hitting those benchmarks, then you're not likely a close contact, right? And so if you are a close contact and it's determined through this process, then what would happen is that you'd be asked to quarantine and connect with your health provider and or get tested. That way we can be certain and not create that general community spread that could happen here on campus. So process-wise, again, it's a simple form where you give us some contact information and context. The select few here on campus will review that information and connect with you with additional questions that are just trying to gather, did you know, the spaces that you might have gone to on campus, so that we could then further connect and make sure that, we are addressing the needs or the potential exposure that we have had. At that point, determinations are made. One, it can be that, say, a class has to go home, an office has to shut down, or the select few have to go home and quarantine it out. In exchange, what we do locally here at Leeward is that we sanitize any space that may have been exposed. And so we leave it closed for the 24 hours and we go in and we basically, spray it. I don't know the mechanics of it, but that's what we do. We sanitize it, clean it up, give it that wait period, and then reopen it and allow folks back in that were not necessarily truly exposed or that just happened to not be here. It's very infrequent that we go that far. It's very frequent where someone tells you to submit that form and we evaluate it, connect with you, and then make a determination that way. So we are supporting the Department of Health by doing our own contact tracing. That's not to say the Department of Health isn't doing their own and may contact you anyways, because we do connect with the Department of Health if we have a confirmed case. That's the only time that we connect with the Department of Health. On our end, it's because we cannot afford for the Department of Health to take 8 to 10 days to then figure out that someone was in one of our spaces, because by then it may have led to a lot more spread. So I don't know, Alexa, if I covered what may have been the concerns.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if anyone else wants to add to that or share any other concerns, please do. But thank you. I think it's just helpful for students to understand why those are sent, and then again, just what to look out for and how to prepare for that. So thank you. And I will share very briefly about the Student Urgent Relief Fund, because I'm sure students might have questions about that. So I am the one that actually kind of oversees that. And so for students who are interested If you were a summer student registered with 3 credits at Leeward, then you would have received an email from me through leefund@hawaii.edu. That's the email that you will reference. And you would have been invited to apply. So please check your hawaii.edu emails. It's super important. That's where any important emails regarding the campus goes to that. So if you were, again, summer 3 credits, any of the summer sessions, 1 or 2, you would have been invited. If you are a current fall student, we actually haven't sent out that invitation yet because we're just getting in the summer applications. And so far we actually we had about 300 students apply. So it's been very busy for our committee. And thank you for those that have applied and you're waiting patiently. As my email states, it will take us about 2 to 3 weeks to get back to you and notify you about your reward. And again, part of that is because we have 300 apps to go through and there's only 3 committee members that are going through that. So thank you for your patience. So if you were both summer and fall, you actually can apply twice. So you need to apply you have to submit 2 separate applications, one for summer and one for fall. And you have to be a Leeward home campus student for fall. So if you are taking a class here at Leeward, but your home campus is, let's just say, West Oahu, you will not have access to the portal and you will then have to apply at West. But every campus is different in terms of how they're distributing funds, how they're doing their application portal. So you can't necessarily use the same criteria at Leeward for your home campus. So just letting all students know that. So again, just check your hawaii.edu emails for the email from Lee Fund. Did anyone have questions about the Student Urgent Relief Fund? We actually have had a lot more apply this year so far compared to our previous semesters. So we never had 300 in the first week. So students are very eager to receive some of those funds. Okay, any other questions for myself or for Chancellor Pen? Okay, all right, and then any last remaining words, Chancellor, before we close up?
Sure thing. You often have an opportunity to share some thoughts with students and the community, but I don't always remember to say that we're here for students in the community. And so we want to be supportive. And so if there are barriers, this is definitely a conduit of communicating some of these so that we could help address some of them. Communication is always going to be a little bit difficult, especially when we've been so used to just waltzing into classroom and making announcements. In the digital world, it's easier to communicate, but it's not always as effective. And so we definitely want to work some of those out. But as parting words, I do want to say that a lot of the folks here at Leeward are working extra hours and extra intentionally because we're grossly understaffed given the circumstances. And, with Labor Day, I do want to, basically commend all of our employees and you that work all the time because we don't get thanked often. But I do appreciate what everyone has been doing, and I appreciate your leadership as an SG because you do provide information that I could take back to my leadership and make things happen. So thanks everyone, and be proactive and vigilant of what's happening. The long weekends have been a little bit of an obstacle for reducing some of the caseloads, and so keep up the spirits, and again, use this venue for me to learn and be able to address any issues that may come about. And so with that, wishing you a very happy long weekend, and let me know if there's anything else that I can do for you.
Thank you for being here, Chancellor.
Awesome, thank you so much. We'll see you next month.
I feel so caught up with this information. Mahalo, Chancellor Pen, for the updates. Mahalo to everyone that listened or watched this Gain Knowledge, Build Relationships episode. I hope you were able to catch all the updates that have happened within the month of September. As mentioned, updates are constantly coming in, so please stay tuned for more next month. Don't forget to stay connected with my friends at Leeward CC Student Government by following them on Instagram at LeewardSG and their YouTube page, Leeward SG. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to continue listening for more stories, continue to be on the lookout for the Leeward CC Student Life podcast and find the Gain Knowledge, Build Relationships series and episodes. Remember to stay safe, stay connected, and keep gaining knowledge. This is ʻUlu signing off. Ahui ho!